Alright, what's going on, guys? As I've been playing Elden Ring ever since it released on the 25th, there's been a thought that's been lingering in my mind, and I wanted to make a video on it, but I wanted to get as far as possible in the game to make sure I was right in that, and try to alleviate some of the recency bias. But at this point, I'm getting pretty close to the end of the game, at least I think, and I can confidently say it's almost undeniable that Elden Ring is the perfect video game experience. Now, of course there's some bias because these are my favorite types of games, but I want to go point by point and explain why Elden Ring as a game achieves everything that a video game should. And I've watched a lot of reviews for the game, but there are a few things that I've been looking for in a video game for the longest time that I haven't been able to find until I played through Elden Ring. And it's things that the video game industry as a whole seems to have forgotten about, but was magnified to perfection in Elden Ring. And I'll explain all of that here. But before we get into that, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and leave a comment letting me know what is one aspect of a video game that constitutes the word perfection for you. Because for me, it's one thing that Elden Ring does absolutely phenomenally, and that is create an immersive and unique experience based on the player that plays it. Now that might sound like a cop-out, but let me explain. When I play a video game, the main thing I'm looking for, aside from basic multiplayer games, is to have an adventure that's my own. If there's one thing I can't stand in games, it's when the game is the same every time you play it and the same experience for everyone that plays it. And I've noticed that's kind of been a trend for the last decade or so, where games have kind of become movies with inputs, rather than an experience based on the player who's playing it. Now, Elden Ring is an RPG, so it does tailor to this more so than other types of games. And that's not to say games of this trend cannot be good, but I do think those types of games can fall short in providing the experience that a video game should. And this is where I think Elden Ring excels the most. First of all, the game is set in an open world, and this allows it to have vast replayability, but the main thing it does is guarantee that everybody that plays it is going to diverge at some point. No two people are going to take the exact same steps and the exact same path in the same order, and what this does is guarantee that everybody's adventure is unique. You learn very quickly that this is a game that you're playing, not a game that's playing you. And what causes me to get so lost and so immersed in Elden Ring is that at no moment on your unique adventure are you going to become totally aimless. You literally cannot roam for more than a minute in any direction without coming across something that you could be doing. Elden Ring has one of the most densely packed open worlds I've ever seen. There's always something to fight, something to explore, or a puzzle to solve everywhere you go. Now, density alone doesn't make the world of the game good. Where Elden Ring excels in this regard is by making sure every point of exploration that you're doing is going to be worthwhile. Even if the loot that you get at the end may not be something that you need, you know that for somebody else out there on their own adventure, that loot was exactly what they were looking for. And the next side of exploration may be the one tailored for you. And what this does is create an addicting and rewarding gameplay loop that never gets old. At the end of the day though, none of that matters if the game isn't fun to play. Now, I know not everybody likes the Souls style of gameplay, but you have to acknowledge the feeling of intense combat, the feedback you get when you strike a boss, and the constant looming threat of losing the progress you just made or all the runes you're holding make for some of the best experiences you can have. For me personally, this is my favorite type of game. The Souls gameplay is the most fun I've had in a single player game ever. And Elden Ring takes the formula that they know works for sure, and does something that other games need to take note of. When evolving their perfect formula, they don't add a new feature that they force you to make use of. All they do is provide you, the player, more ways to get creative with it. It's been the trend recently to take things that have worked in other games, and every AAA studio starts making use of it in their games and forcing you to play with it. I guarantee everybody that's watching this video has played at least one game in the past 5 years that makes you use a grapple hook. I remember Titanfall being the first one that I played with it, and then every game after that started having a grapple hook. Now, I can't deny that it's a fun addition to gameplay, but the whole time I was playing these other games, I just kept being reminded that if I wanted to play Titanfall, I'd go play Titanfall. Elden Ring doesn't try to be anything that it knows it's not. These games have their own identity, they know what works for them, and when evolving their formula, all they do is put it in the hands of the player to evolve it in the way they see fit. You don't have to use the new additions, they're there for you and they don't infringe on your adventure at all. Something above all else that Elden Ring does phenomenally is have a unique and beautiful art style. This is one of the best looking games I've ever played, and I'm not just talking about graphics. I mean, every moment in this game looks like a painting. Every boss fight is a spectacle of its own. I haven't seen every area in this game yet, but I kid you not, I cannot count the amount of times where I've just had my breath taken away by the view. And once again, it's not just because of the graphics. While they are great, the game makes full use of its fantasy setting to present landscapes and set pieces that are simply unforgettable. But they all feel like they make sense in terms of the world that we're playing in. The areas aren't huge for the sake of being huge. There's a reason and a purpose behind all of the architecture. Stormvale Castle isn't gigantic with spikes all over it just to look cool. It directly reflects the nature of the king that once owned it. The Erd Tree isn't just a gigantic beautiful tree, its size correlates to the power and influence it has over the land. It all makes sense and adds to the immersion. And it's all the things I've described so far that make Elden Ring so great. I've played a ton of video games, and I've played a ton of video games that I would consider great in their own rights, but it seems like every one of those games has some sort of fatal flaw that makes them less than perfect to me. I'm being 100% honest when I say this, I can't think of one thing that makes Elden Ring not perfect. When I think of the word masterpiece, I do think it is overused in the gaming industry. That word is applicable to Elden Ring, because when I think of what a video game should be, Elden Ring ticks all the boxes. You get to go on an adventure that's totally unforgettable, that sucks you into the world, that's addictingly fun to play, with intriguing characters and settings, and absolutely nothing to rip you from that experience. I'm 50 hours into the game right now, and I'm already hyped to play my second playthrough. So if you're someone who is considering getting this game and hasn't already, I would highly encourage you to make that decision, because this is a game that comes around once in a lifetime. But guys, that's going to pretty much wrap up my thoughts on that topic. I wanted to give a type of review for the game, but there really is nothing for me to say other than that it's perfect. I really have no faults with this game, none at all. I've never been hooked like this ever since I was a kid. And if you guys are Souls fans, you probably remember your first experience with the first Dark Souls game. And honestly, I gotta say my blind playthrough of Elden Ring right now is better. And that's really all there is to it. This game really is better than I could have ever imagined, and it was worth the hype. But that's going to pretty much do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll catch you in the next one.